Perfect. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for a Member of Parliament engagement webinar. We're very excited to have all of you join us from across the country. And I'd like actually to introduce myself. If you are connected by computer, you'll see me. I have my webcam on. So it's nice. Hopefully some of you will also join with your webcam, so I'm not the only one. Feel free to do that if you're comfortable doing so. So my name is Melissa Dubé. I'm the Public Engagement Organizer at Results Canada. So I'm very glad to have the opportunity to be discussing with you today and with my colleague Neha Beri on MP engagement. So as you can tell, the webinar will be in English and it will last more or less 55 minutes, give or take, including questions. So depending on how many questions and discussions we have towards the end, we'll adjust the time of the webinar, but it will not run longer than an hour. As I mentioned earlier, the webinar is being recorded because we will not only be sharing it with you all who have joined us, but there are also a number of other people who were unfortunately unable to join us who will also receive the recording. So don't worry about taking lots of notes. You can if you want to, but you will also receive the slides and the recording. As mentioned, everyone is muted to ensure the best experience for everyone. But you will have an opportunity to speak up towards the end, and you can use at any time the chat box. So if you want to talk to me directly, just click on my name. If you want to raise something for everyone, please do that as well. And if you ever are unable to hear Neha and myself speak, also please use the chat box to make sure that we have the best experience all together. And as mentioned, we will have a discussion period towards the end. So take note of your burning questions. It'll be a perfect time for you to ask those. So I know we're really lucky actually. I'm super excited because we have tonight with us people who are already involved with Results, and we also have friends of Results. So it's great to have all of you join us. So I'll just quickly introduce Results so that you all know who we are. So we are a national grassroots advocacy organization that is based out of Ottawa. And we have been around for more than 30 years, and we focus on international development issues in the Global South. So we believe in empowering engaged citizens to use their voices to influence the political will to end poverty. So we combine the voices of our grassroots advocates, our volunteers, with strategic advocacy efforts to leverage millions of dollars for programs and improved policies that support better opportunities for people to thrive. We work on campaigns such as education, vaccines and immunization, nutrition, and tuberculosis. Whether it's through writing letters to the editor, taking it to social media, or engaging with members of parliament, our passionate volunteers succeed in having an impact in the world. So today, we have the opportunity to expand our skills by exploring MP engagement, as this is vital to the work that we do and that you also do perhaps in your other organizations or through your volunteer work. So as I've mentioned, we're very happy to have Results volunteers and friends of Results on the line. So perhaps while some examples will put emphasis on Results work, you'll still be able to apply the tips to your own reality and work. So, and it actually might also inspire you to join us and get involved with Results. If you are, get in touch with me. Without further ado, I'm happy to pass it over to my colleague Neha Beri, who is our Parliamentary Officer, who will share insights and will conduct tonight's webinar. Neha?
Thank you so much, Melissa, and I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes.
Perfect, awesome. So thank you everyone for spending an evening with Results Canada. My name is Neha Beri, as mentioned by Melissa, and I'm the Parliamentary Officer with Results. So basically, before Results, I had worked on Parliament Hill for several years, working for various members of Parliament, and I am new to this end of the spectrum in terms of advocacy. So I'm really happy, and I think that we're going to be in for a great treat of kind of where we can discuss, and I left a lot of time in the end for questions. that you guys may have, as many of you have already kind of maybe have engaged with members of Parliament, and if not, then you're certainly able to ask me any kind of questions you may receive when you're starting to do some outreach with members of Parliament. So, well, I just wanted to give a little bit of a debrief as to why I left Parliament and why I wanted to join with Results. So originally, I actually wasn't necessarily looking to get involved with Results per se, but I think that it was after a great discussion with Chris Dendies and Taryn Russell that really kind of made me believe in what the work that we're doing here. And that's why I decided to kind of take a step out of the political realm and really be more of an advocate. Because as we know, there's people that advocate from within and there's people that advocate from outside. And I really believe that there's power in what we're doing and we are really able to make a lot of change. Advocacy is really something that is considered as a democratic right. I think it's so important for people to want to do better and to see better in the world. And I think that's where our power is. And it's really important that we speak with members of Parliament or our elected officials on any levels to see how we can push the envelope forward to see the world become a better place. So I think that's really important for us. I'm wondering if I can go to the next slide. Perfect,
I'll be doing the clicking for you, Neha. So
awesome, thank you.
Just tell me when.
Perfect, thanks. Okay, so we have our mission, which Melissa did go into, so to generate the political will to end extreme poverty. And I really emphasize the political will because what's so great about Results and what we're doing is that, especially when, as someone who wasn't necessarily into the quote unquote international development sphere, when I thought about making a change, it was something like, you know, donating $10 every month to a certain group. What's so great about Results is that it's about leveraging your voice in order to propel billions of dollars to make change. I think that's what's so great about it, is this political will aspect and making sure that we have our voice and autonomy in Parliament so that we are able to not just get $10 out of a regular Canadian's pocket, but how we can get billions of dollars out of the government's pocket, which I think is really important for us to focus on. So I did really want to emphasize the fact that this is why I think Results is so special and so different in what we do and why I believe in what we're doing. And I think that this is a great first step in terms of how we can start that political will. So, you know, it's not only just about seeing a better change, but it's also just strategic to do advocacy. It's something that doesn't cost much in terms of meeting with your MP. It does require some work and some effort, which we'll get into a little bit later. But it's something that anyone can do, whether you're a younger person or older person or anyone in between. It's something that we all can easily do in terms of just getting involved politically so that we can help drive some of this change that we want to see in the world. And as we know, the country is very wide in how many MPs we have, and it's a lot for someone who does government relations to be able to meet with all of them. So really, in my role, I'm so dependent on people to talk with their MPs in person. They personally don't care to hear from me all the time. It's definitely your voice that's more impactful to these MPs, which I'll get into a bit later. But I did just want to emphasize how important it is and how important you are to pushing this forward. So with that being said, I'd like to go to the next slide. So before we even kind of get into the big bulk of what we're going to talk about, I did just want to make sure for some of those who may be new to advocacy, what we kind of do before we even involve ourselves in meeting with an MP. We want to make sure we know who our MP is, which is why I included this link that has the postal code. So this is what actually members of Parliament use directly. So when I used to receive emails from advocates from across the country on various issues, I would check to see where their postal code is, and I would make sure that they're the constituent of the MP that I represented. So feel free to use this link if you're not sure who your MP is, to put your postal code in the link and it'll populate who your MP is. It'll give you their contact information and their email and their address. So feel free to play around with that if you're unsure about who your member of Parliament is. That's just a little link. And before we even get into, again, recommending or requesting a meeting, we want to do some research on our MP. So now you know who your MP is. Let's do a little digging on what they know. So we want to know if they hold an official title. Are they potentially a minister? Are they a parliamentary secretary? Are they a chair of a standing committee? Are they part of a shadow cabinet if they're not in the government party position? But it's really important to kind of know this before you request the meeting. And I think that this is something that you can find also on the link. So when you do look up your member of Parliament's postal code, in it, there's a tab in there that also gives you roles, and it'll clearly explain what they're part of or if they are part of anything. You may want to know what standing committee he or she sits on. That's also really helpful to know. And even if you click on the hyperlink of that committee, it can tell you recent studies that they've worked on, or you can even listen to some of the committee meetings. They usually have it online. So that's really helpful as well, just to hear kind of where their lineup of questionings are, or maybe their interests and what they kind of bring up in committee, which is really interesting. And it's important to know what issues matter to your MP. So look on their website. You often see, you know, kind of common themes that they have, whether they're talking about certain things like nutrition. I've worked with several members of parliament that felt nutrition was really important. So that may be something, you'll see it in different ways, but ultimately they're always kind of promoting a similar, maybe like healthy lifestyle or international trade or whatever it is that they find interesting. But you do see a common theme in a lot of their postings on social media as well. And MPs are very cognizant of what they're putting out there, and they often have chats with their staff about kind of what their angle is or what they feel they can contribute or speak to on a personal level that they can bring to Parliament. So it's really helpful to kind of look at their website and say, okay, yeah, it seems like they keep mentioning, you know, nutrition. That's a really interesting point to know, just in case you want to mention it in the meeting or if you want to link it to some of the campaigns that we work on. So that's really important to know before you request a meeting. Next slide. Okay, so we're going to request a meeting. Now, oftentimes you're given the main, what we call the main MP account, which is usually the MP's first name dot last name at parl.gc.ca. This is their public domain. They often just get, that's what they send out to the public, where they can, anyone can send any email to them, and from there they have a person who triages kind of who should see this information. Now they have something called the C1 account. Now this account is specifically for people in the constituency office. For people who are advocating in various parts of the country, it's really important that we CC the C1 account, because this person is pretty much like the highest level of the constituency office. So they are the person that will most likely have the final say in terms of what's happening in the constituency. It's a pretty powerful person because the MP is often in Ottawa and is unable to obviously see everything that comes in and out of the office. But this C1 account usually is the person that is essentially the MP when the MP is not around, and who's able to kind of give that information back to the MP while he or she's in Ottawa, or kind of bump up certain people if they think it's really important. As we all know that weekends and evenings, especially when the MP is around in their riding, that they become quite full. So this person is very important. So I would just recommend that we CC the C1 account person, and it would just be the MP's first name dot the MP's last name dot C1, which would be their assistant at parl.gc.ca when you're sending this email. So ask for a meeting to introduce yourself if you haven't already met your MP or if you don't know your MP. And I really want to emphasize that you want to be a constituent who cares about ending global poverty. Oftentimes, you know, in campaigns or in various organizations, they ask, you know, we want to increase X by Y. And that's really important. And obviously those are important things we need to do. But I think it's important for the MP to see that your ultimate end goal, or what you're branding yourself as to the MP, is about someone who cares about ending global poverty. So you want to say, this is ultimately what I want from my MP to do or focus on. And this is one aspect of how we can try to end global poverty. So again, not to focus specifically on, we need this one budgetary ask. It's more about, I'm a person that cares about ending global poverty. I'd love to talk to you more about how we can do that in our meeting, and just kind of then infiltrate more. So like the specifics once you're in the meeting, but we'll get to that in a bit. So don't forget to include your residential address in your initial email. Like I said, when I used to receive many emails from the main MP account, oftentimes you wouldn't even get a reply unless you had your postal code already in there. And once we verify whether or not you are a constituent or not, then you get bumped up the list. So if you have the right postal code and it matches the MP you're trying to meet, more chances than not you will get the meeting. So it's really important, especially if you're one of those kind of groups that we have in different cities where you kind of make up an entire city. It might be good to have at least 1 or 2 people with you from that specific riding who can speak to some of these issues, again, just to verify, as we know that their days are quite full. So, I mean, I understand why they prioritize their constituents. It's just a matter of trying to find like-minded people that are more than willing to come with you to the meeting and can obviously speak to some of these issues. So I think that's really important to include the address in your initial email. And then follow up every week and a half if you do not hear back from their office. Some offices are obviously better than others, and it gets quite busy, and obviously depending on what's happening in their riding, some news stories kind of take over their office and yours might get lost in translation. But again, if you are planning on reaching out to your MP, and if you ever want to reach out to myself or anyone at Results, we're more than happy to help you figure out what timing works best or when we could be a good time to kind of make that request, as we know that things are kind of gearing up, and we know that an election is coming in about a year away. So there might be some pending issues, but certainly we can figure out a time and a place that's best for you to make that request. Next slide. So hopefully your efforts to write this email works out well and you've now set up a meeting. So they have come back to you and said, yeah, let's do something. And we'd love to hear what you have to say about ending global poverty. So just a few things we're going to cover in more detail, but I did just want to break it down for you a little bit here. We want to make sure that we're not being too formal in the meetings. We want to avoid bringing too many materials for them to read. We want to come prepared with answers, but speak in plain language, and we always want to have an ask for the meeting. So I'll get a little bit more into detail as we move forward. Next slide. Okay, so the power of the grassroots. I just did want to share a really great example that I had at the National Conference for Results Canada, which, by the way, is a great thing that we do here, that we really get hands-on experience with meeting with MPs from across the country on issues that matter to us. So one of these great examples actually was a longtime grassroots volunteer who actually sat with his MP and sat down and looked at him and said, you know, I am a father with children, and I can only imagine what would happen if they were dying from diseases that are clearly preventable. And this is happening, maybe not to my family, but it could very well be. And this is happening around the world. And to me, that's what is bringing me here today. And I think stories like that are much more impactful than, you know, saying you're a member of Results Canada staff or team or whatever it is. So I did just want to emphasize the power of the grassroots and how showing that everyday Canadians care about ending extreme poverty around the world. So, for example, like if you're speaking as a retired nurse or as a commerce student, that perspective is much more valuable personally, especially being on the other side of the meetings when I've been with members of parliament during these meetings, is that when you hear that impactful story, that really resonates with them much more than it does if you were just meeting another lobby group. So as I wrote, MPs hear enough from lobby groups. They really want to hear what their constituents are saying. So I think you just being a constituent and being a voter and someone who cares about this issue is much more effective, in my opinion, than it is to just throw, you know, that we're here on behalf of X group and this is what we're trying to say. So I think that's really important for you guys to find your voice in this and why it matters to you. And then we just don't want to be too formal. So let's avoid using any type of presentations. It's not usually something that I think works well in many meetings. MPs like to have a conversation and it be more free flowing. So I think it's important to maybe have some good points written down, but don't be so stuck on finishing your 3 points before they talk. If they interrupt or if they have questions or if there's something that they really want to get a deeper dive into, take note of the fact that they're interested in whatever that issue was or whatever sparked their interest into continuing the conversation. But don't be afraid to, you know, go back to your notes later and say, oh yeah, and by the way, I did want to also add X, Y, and Z. You know, just be open to the conversation. Don't be so stuck on going through all these pages and points and documents and articles. So just take a deep breath, know that and feel that you understand the issues and be able to speak to them in a various ways. So it doesn't make it so formal, which I think is really important. Next slide. Okay, so another thing I've noticed just when I was working with MPs as well is that we don't want to overwhelm them with so much information. And from what I know and from what I've seen firsthand, Results Canada and their grassroots are some of the most knowledgeable people I've ever met. Like, they definitely know their issues. They definitely know what matters to people around the world and how it matters economically and socially and justice-wise, and it's great. However, we just don't want them all to be as knowledgeable within the half an hour that we have them as we are. So we want to just really focus on the issue at hand and how we can kind of get them working up to their ask. So MPs focus on many issues in a day. It's a lot, and I've been there. You have to kind of be a little bit of an expert on anything. So just keep in mind that we are one of the many issues they hear every day. So just keep that in mind when you're preparing for your meetings, and not to be so focused on just giving them all the information about international development right away, and just to know that this is going to be their kind of half an hour of dealing with what it is your concerns are, and we're going to walk you through how that's best done. So assume the MP is not familiar with our issues at all. And I'm using the example of TB. Now for us, and most of us on this webinar know what TB is, but a lot of MPs are like, I'm sorry, what's TB? Like, TB is tuberculosis. And then they're gonna say, well, what's tuberculosis? So to us, saying like, oh yes, we're here to talk about TB, like they may or may not know what that is. So I think it's just, again, taking like a couple steps back and being kind of far removed from the issues to know exactly and how to spell it out in very plain language, which I think is really important, and we'll get into that a bit later. So keep documents to a minimum. The goal is not to make them an expert in the half an hour, but to inspire them to take action on the ask. And we'll get into the ask a little bit later. But again, it's really important to stress, we don't need them to be experts. We just need them to feel like they want to take action on what we need them to take action on. And that framing is what really makes all the advocates very successful. And I think that keeping the documents to a minimum is really important, because to be perfectly frank, they just don't have the time to read all of the articles you're going to send them, all of the PowerPoints we have. And although we know we have the data, and although we know we have all the numbers to back ourselves up, they really just need to know the gist of it, where they can go, should their staff want to look into more information on it. But ultimately, they just want to know what you want and how they can help. And that's really what you want to encompass in your half an hour meeting with them. And like I said before, it's okay to prepare some bullets. I often do it myself for a lot of meetings, but really it's about probing and understanding kind of where their framework is. So yes, I know the 5 key bullets I want to say, but really listen to the types of questions they are asking and see how we can help them get to the answers if they aren't sure about it. So if sometimes when I meet with MPs, they'll say, okay, so yeah, I see what you're saying about, you know, lack of access to education, but how can we, you know, help this, or how are women more affected by this, and those kinds of probing questions to see kind of where their angle is and why they're interested in that. And I think by picking up on what they're saying or even asking actually does help all of us in our advocacy in terms of how we can then further support kind of their questions and where their angle might be. So that's really important as well. And I wrote, sometimes it is more about probing than knowledge downloading. So that's a big point as well. Like sometimes it's about, we get more out of the meeting than they do in a sense. And sometimes that's actually beneficial, because it's not about just, this is your one-time shot of this meeting with this MP. You're hoping to build a lasting relationship with them. So know and maybe understand that you will have other opportunities to give them more information or to follow up with an email. But for right now, you just want to make sure that you're able to get more of a deeper understanding of what they're interested in, how they can help you, and then also what we can do for next steps. Next slide. So speak in plain language. And this is something that I feel like I can speak to firsthand, being working here at Results for a couple months, but You guys, again, are so knowledgeable on the files, and I think that is super valuable. However, sometimes I feel like I have way more to learn about in terms of some of the files, which I think is really great. But a lot of MPs feel the same way. It's not something that necessarily we all have international development degrees, but it's really important that we understand that not everyone has this deep depth of knowledge in it. So MPs understand your issue when you use plain language. A lot of them have various backgrounds. Not all of them even went to university. A lot of them may have, have completely different backgrounds or have studied other things or have different experiences. So this may not be something in their wheelhouse. However, I think overall, in terms of international development and obviously helping people and people helping people, I think all MPs understand that. So I think there's always an area of opportunity for MPs to want to jump in and want to be part of what we're doing. It's just a matter of explaining it in a way that they will understand it. So as I mentioned, avoid using acronyms and complicated phrases. A lot of MPs, they will start to glaze over. They will not be listening to what you're saying within the first 15 minutes because they realize this is way in over their heads, and their staff will probably deal with this, and it's not something that's interesting them. So again, pick up on those cues in your meeting. If you start to see that your MP is getting a bit glazed over, maybe ask a probing question or ask them what they think about something that, was pressing in terms of what you guys are talking about, and try to get them re-engaged again. It is not about how much you know, but how you communicate what they need to know. So again, let's not try to lecture at them, but more so just try to help them, inspire them to want to take action on what we need them to do. And that's really the conversations we need to be having. And again, as I mentioned before, so just allow them to interject with questions or clarifications, and let it be a free-flowing conversation. A lot of the time, MPs, they're used to being the ones who are speaking and kind of in the room dominating. So I think when some people come in and they have a lot to say, they may want to ask more questions or see how they can help or want to be part of the dialogue more so. So I think just letting them do that and obviously keeping them on track of why we're there and why we're talking. But don't be afraid if they kind of come in between and go on a tangent about something you said, because it's just showing their interest in what you're talking about. So, and just make note of what it is that really sparked that interest or that question, so that later on we can kind of figure out maybe why they said that or what they're interested in or why they may have felt that way about whatever it is you said. Next slide. So the ask seals the deal. That's the main reason why we try to do these meetings. We don't like to just go to a meeting for the sake of saying we went to a meeting. The whole point is we need them to do something. That is what the beauty of advocacy is. It's about getting someone in a high position to do something good for the world. So that's why it's always important to have an ask in your meeting. And that depends on really what you think is best. We, as Results Canada, do like to give some suggestions on what these asks might be in some of these meetings, and we have them in various forms on our website in our action sheet. But if you have a meeting with your MP and you really wanted to talk about something, that's something that you can discuss with you or your group about what it is you want to do. So as I said, it could be as simple as the MP posting a picture of your meeting, emphasizing the importance of ending global poverty, especially if it's just a first-time meeting. They may not feel as comfortable right away to necessarily do something. Some might, some are quick to jump on board and they understand and they get what we're doing and they want to take action right away. But don't feel offended if just the first time they just want to take a photo and simply promote the fact that they've met with you and they enjoyed your chat. So that's also just as great. It could be asking for a member statement in the House of Commons around an issue. And so example we would have is like World Water Week. Perhaps that's an area, looking kind of long term that maybe as a person who's in Alberta, I might say, you know what, I might meet with my MP and ask about if they can write a statement about World Water Week and talking about, water sanitation and why it's important. So again, just thinking kind of things through. I know there's International Women's Day. There's tons of angles in which grassroots can take kind of a good aim at what they want to promote and how they can get the results they want from their MP. So that's really great. So write a letter to the Prime Minister. They could write a letter to the leader of a party, or maybe you can get your member of parliament to write a letter to a minister. So for many of those who aren't familiar, obviously these are very key people that influence a lot of what we do and where we give money. And so having a member of parliament write a letter on your behalf as a constituent to say, my constituent's concerned about this issue, are you able to push this forward or to move the needle on X, Y, and Z? I mean, this does happen often. Again, as a former staffer, I've written many of these letters, and certainly the MP must review it and read it and be okay with signing it off because it is on their letterhead, but it is something a lot of MPs' offices do. So I think there's nothing wrong with, obviously, as you build a relationship, or if you feel that the MP meeting's going really well, it might be worth asking for them to write a letter of support or to push on something that we know we need, like extra funding for, whatever the case may be. And as I mentioned before, we do have an action sheet every month that we post online on our website, which kind of gives a breakdown of something that, whatever the campaign is of the month. So this month we're talking about the global financing facility, and we want to make sure, you know, that that issue is being brought forward today. And so we give kind of different actions on how you can get involved in advocacy on different levels. So I really encourage you guys to take a look at our website and see what we're doing on that front. And every month we have a whole new action that really is inspiring people from all across the country to go and meet with their MP or write to their MP or tweet to their MP about these very important issues that do make a huge difference in the lives of people all around the world. So that's really important. Next slide. Okay, so after the meeting, hopefully you can thank your MP by email for their time and gently remind them of what the ask is. So again, those ones we just went over. If they haven't already committed in the meeting with you, then obviously just gently remind them. And if they have, then you already know that they've done that. You can also be asked to be added to their distribution list. That's really important as well because MPs are really busy and do a lot of work in the community. They're always worried about re-election, to be perfectly honest with you. So they often do things in the community. And it'd be great for you to know as an advocate where they will be in opportunities in which you can kind of cross paths and see if you can get 10 minutes or 5 minutes, or just even just to remind them that you did meet with them and that you are always able to kind of connect other people to what the work that they're doing, whether it be a town hall or a barbecue or whatever it is that they're doing. After your meeting, please notify Melissa, and then you can fill out the MP meeting form, which is also online, so all the information is shared there. And then that way we can keep track of what's going on, and obviously maybe have a little debrief with you afterwards about how it went and all that good stuff. So send any pictures you have from the meeting so we can promote a job well done. We love seeing the pictures with MPs and grassroots. That's probably one of my favorite things that I love seeing in my inbox. It's just so great to see people caring about advocacy and really just making a difference. This is something I know takes a lot of courage, and I've seen a lot of nervous people sitting on a couch in an MP's room, but it is the most fulfilling thing to feel after you've done a job well done with an MP, and they really do feel that they want to make a difference. That's why a lot of them get involved in the first place. So just know that you're not the only one, and that many people, you know, have been in your shoes, and it's really just a great experience all around, and certainly something I encourage everyone to do. Next slide. So just a few things to keep in mind. You don't always need to take everything to the MP level. You know, we want to manage our time with the MPs, and sometimes less is more. So, you know, again, it's really important that we get a meeting with an MP, absolutely. But in terms of every, you know, if something comes up or there's an update on something you're talking about, we don't need to have a meeting with the MP every time. Sometimes, again, with that C1 assistant I was talking about earlier, maybe that's the point person you want to talk to about updating any documents, or if there's movement on a file, or you want to thank them for their contributions or whatever it is, that sometimes it's better to go to the staff. And oftentimes the MP is really just there to listen and nod, and then they really delegate the work to the staff anyways. So staff are oftentimes some of your best friends, and in terms of can be quite powerful players when you're dealing with advocacy. So that's really important. And just mentioning that, yeah, so they are the gatekeepers to the MPs. We do know elections are coming up in about a year. I just did want to flag quickly that it's really important that you introduce yourselves to all the candidates. I know some of you are maybe really close with your MPs right now or know them quite well, but all of these candidates, any of them could very well be your MP after election day. So it's really important. We are a nonpartisan group. We just want to make sure that we're getting the right people to move the right way in terms of making a big impact. So let's be friendly with all people and make sure we can work amongst all party lines to make sure that we're doing the right things in terms of ending global poverty. That's really important. And obviously, of course, our office is always here for you. We, live and breathe this stuff every day. This is something we're all passionate about. I left the Hill to do this because that's how much I love it so much. So, I mean, if any way we can help you at all, please do not be afraid to let us know, and we can certainly help you out there. I did want to talk about also, we have, and I just realized this now, we have budget consultations coming up, and we do have a toolkit online as well on our website, which I'm happy to share later on, in terms of how you can connect with this process and how you can speak with your MP about what we need to be doing in the upcoming federal budget. So that's something that's really important. And I just did want to mention that as well. Next slide. So aside meetings, because I know some people may not feel comfortable jumping right into an MP meeting, there's other ways in which we can connect with our MP. We can simply tweet at our MP. A lot of them, although their staff do kind of monitor their Twitter, some of them do their own Twitter. So tweet at your MP. There's nothing wrong with doing that, and kind of maybe using a hashtag. For example, for the pre-budget consultations, you were using hashtag budget 2019. So that way, all your stuff is being trending or being tagged, and that way we can try to link our issues to their issues. So that's really helpful. Go to local events where your political representatives might show up. Again, over the summer, I know they've been hosting a lot of barbecues, or they do town halls on certain things. So that's really important for you to know where you can find them, and also just running into them in other groups or organizations that host things. We had a lot of people at Results Canada within the grassroots. They've hosted many events, and MPs joined them at their events. So that's also a great way to get your MP involved and out in the community. Encourage other people to speak to their MPs on our issues. Like I said, this country is large, and there's so many ridings and so many MPs, and there's only so many of us. So it's really important that we start encouraging our friends and our family and people that we know who care about this issue to speak with their MPs, or to at least, again, like tweet at them, or just even write an email if they're really uncomfortable with meeting in person. But it's just so important that we start reaching out to the community level and really try to get these people that are in high positions of power to really make a difference. So I really would encourage that. I also and forever will encourage people to run for office. I know this is a big thing that I really advocate for. I think, like I said, there's people that are within that make change, and there's people that without, and we could use some people within that want to make the change. So again, I really encourage everyone, if you have an interest in this, if you really like it, advocacy is a great stepping stool for just getting into the office. So I think that's really important as well. And I believe that's it for my portion. I know Melissa will continue from here on, and I'll be here at the end for any questions anyone may have. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Neha. That was really, really interesting. And I think it's really important to remember that your personal story, as you mentioned, Neha, is incredibly powerful. So make sure that you have your story ready, so when you get to speak with your MP, you can have that personal connection. And don't forget that it takes time to influence people. Neha mentioned that maybe the first time you'll get them to tweet a photo of your group, of yourself with your MP, and maybe the next time it'll be something a bit more and more. So don't feel like you haven't succeeded. You have. It takes time to influence and change someone's behavior. So don't forget about that, and also take the time to celebrate. I mean, it's no small feat to get a meeting, to speak up, to use your voice. It's incredibly powerful. So I hope that you feel ready to tackle this with all of Neha's excellent tips. And actually, before we open up for questions, you're filled with information now. Just wanted to raise with you a few other useful things. So we have on our website, so you have our website URL, results-resultat.ca. Under there, you will find a section called Your Tools, and then just under there, you will see Influence Your MP. So on that webpage, you will find information. So you'll have documents that are your top tips on how to have a successful meeting, how to plan your meeting. So we have a meeting planning form. So if you're meeting with other people, your MP, you can identify who's going to do what during the meeting. And so it really helps you structure your meeting. There are also tips on how to write to your MP, so it definitely echoes what Neha has shared. And there is also a sample letter email that you can use to get inspired from. And we have also other tips like communicating powerfully. We have a video on how to call your MP. So there's a lot of different resources and tools available on our website that I definitely invite you to take a look at. And then, of course, now that we know how to engage with our MP, it's time to act. So if you are not already involved with results, become a volunteer, take action with us, and you will find all of the information again on our website. And we have, as Neha mentioned, monthly actions that contribute towards ending poverty. So definitely encourage you to consider joining us. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing all of your actions and hear from all of you following this in your own personal life, in your own organization, and also hopefully as part of results. So as mentioned now, it's time for Q&A. So if you want to use the group chat, now is the time to ask any questions. And I will also unmute people. You can also, I think, raise your hand. So as I'm unmuting people, just be aware that we are going to be able to hearing you. So if you do not want to speak, you can then mute yourself again. And please don't be shy.
Well, thank you very much, Melissa. Can you hear me?
Yes, hi.
Thank you. It's Hillary Elliott from the Grandmothers Advocacy Network.
Hi, Hillary.
So, thank you to you and to Neha. This has just been a fabulous 45 minutes on how to engage with your MP. I engaged with my MP yesterday, and I sure wish I'd thought about the pictures. But anyway, next time I will remember the pictures. One question I would have is you talked about encouraging people to send an email after they've met with their MP to Melissa and to fill in a form indicating what they covered in the meeting. And this is an issue that we've had with the Grandmothers Advocacy Network when our grandmothers are meeting with MPs, is actually getting them to report to us on the meeting. And it's very difficult to get a handle on that. And we're really trying to measure our effectiveness a little more. Do you have any suggestions on how to encourage people to report on the meetings that they've had?
Well, to be honest, I think Melissa's probably better at answering this question than I am. So Melissa, you can take that one on.
Yeah, sure. That's an excellent question, Hillary. And it's actually something that I also need to remind people constantly that it's incredibly important to report back on any actions that people take, because once we know of all of the actions taken together, there's a power of so many of us doing together work. So I think one of the things that might be useful to use, if you go look on our website, and let me actually pull back the slide again, just so that you have our website URL. You probably already are familiar, Hillary, but on there, we just added an MP planning meeting form, and right on there, you are able to identify who does what during the meeting. So if you're meeting with other colleagues, right from the beginning, you're able to say, all right, I'm doing the ask and you're taking the photo and you are in charge of reporting back. And so then from the beginning, it's clear what is expected of everyone. So I would definitely encourage to try to do that route. You don't necessarily need to use or fill out the entire form. It's just a one-pager, but it can always help you to kind of organize your plan ahead of the meeting. And then I know for myself, for Results Canada, what I do is I follow up with people. And I explained how important it is that we know about the actions. And it's also a good way to celebrate people's actions. So I think just raising awareness and letting people know that we want to celebrate with them what they've accomplished will definitely helps hearing back from people who have met or engaged with their MP.
Thank you.
Yeah, Hillary, just to add as well, I think it's really important that we, again, talk about the strategy and why we do what we do. So I think to get people to report, a big part of it also is to help them understand why reporting is so important. At least for my job as the government relations person here, it really helps me understand how your meeting went with your MP. So that way I'm like, okay, first of all, we have a touch point with this MP because the grants have met with this person. This is what they spoke about. You've done your homework and you have told me, okay, this person asked a lot of questions about gender. This is obviously something of interest to this person. That way, when I am trying to maybe touch point in Ottawa when they're here, or if we ever wanted to invite them to an event, we already kind of have some understanding or have shared some knowledge with each other about kind of what is most strategic with this MP. And that helps me out a lot, and we can kind of work together in terms of how we can share this information so that we can move our agenda forward. So I think just explaining that with a lot of people and saying, listen, it's not just about something you got to report because you got to do that. It's actually just strategic to do. And we're able to share a lot of information. I do a parliamentary report, which is shared with my grassroots people when the House is sitting, and we basically information share. I explain kind of meetings I've had and how it went and what they were interested in, so that they may have some interesting information about someone or a connection, or I often get an email saying, hey, I'm friends with the senator, or my cousin is friends with that MP, and it's really actually helpful to kind of have this information and the sharing of knowledge. So I think that's also a really good way to try to get people to report as well.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I know Sherry Moran has a question, if you're able to speak up.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm on my phone.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, I just, as you know, I've been trying to meet with Ottawa MPs along with some of my Ottawa group colleagues. And I just wanted to make a couple of points based on what we've heard. Very good presentation, by the way, Neha. I like that. I just wanted to add or expand on a couple of points. And one of them was that I found that almost all of our MPs have some kind of international experience. Now, it may have been in the armed forces, but it's still a starting point. So I asked all of them, based on, like, I know you were in Afghanistan and Bosnia and Haiti, former General Leslie, and you weren't there to be working on international assistance, but what did you see? What did you carry away from that? And, you know, you hear things like, I saw extreme poverty, I saw people dying of starvation, I saw mass graves, anyhow, it's part of what you said about starting a conversation rather than giving them a lecture. And I found that invaluable. And at the end, in terms of the follow-up email, that's also really good to focus on the ask, etc. But somebody told me at some point, and I thought this was a have to, and I kind of like it, I put a personal card in the mail, handwritten by me, thanking them, something that they could put up in their office for a while if they wanted to. And the other thing that I wanted to add was the biggest difficulty for me was finding constituents to cover off 9 constituencies in Ottawa. And so what I did for one of them was I invited 2 non-results people, also somebody from Grand, Hillary, but she couldn't come that day, because that's the thing. You have to find out when the MP is available, not when your whole group is available. You can't go to them and offer potential dates. So I did find friends who would come with me who actually knew the MP prior to his political life. And so my friends, they wanted lots of information. I gave it to them ahead of time. I had a pre-meet with them, and then they introduced me, which was really nice and let me chat, but it made it again more of a conversation, which I think made it very, very real and rich for everybody. That's it.
Great. Thank you so much, Sherry. Neha, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, other than I just want to commend Sherry for all your work in Ottawa. And Ottawa is a very special place to be in terms of advocacy, because you do kind of have, it's that balance for Ottawa MPs in terms of being on Parliament Hill and also being in their ridings. So I totally understand why it might be difficult to get those people, but I know that we do know a lot of people who are like-minded individuals, like all of us on this webinar today, that may not necessarily see themselves there yet, but they do care about the same values we do too. And I think if we just keep talking about the issues, I know for myself, since starting here, just talking with my own friend circle about things we talk about and what we do, I think a lot of people can understand and agree to a lot of the things we're working on. So I think just finding like-minded individuals and knowing for yourself, you know, hey, if I set up a meeting, would you like to come with me? I'm more than happy to come with you, but you're able to sit with me and we can kind of talk with your MP. That's great. And I think it just also makes the person feel comfortable. And so, Cher, I'm really happy to hear that those kind of casual conversations really is when the MP feels like their guard is down and are able to just talk to you like a regular person. That is where they feel most comfortable. And you have to remember too, MPs are highly sociable, public people. They're used to people, but it is a little bit nerve-wracking, especially if it's areas that they may not necessarily know about or be experts at, but they certainly, you know, like you said, have worked abroad or have lived abroad, or maybe their kids have moved abroad. So it does help with some of that. So I'm really happy to hear that they were a success.
That's great. Thank you so much. I think now we have Hillary Johnston, who has a question. You have raised your hand.
Hi.
Hi. I hear you.
Good. So my question, and I'm thinking back to when I was last active with Results, which was the early 1990s. So sometimes we used to approach MPs, and sometimes we used to target civil servants who were working on a particular file. And, you know, I know we only have a little bit of time left in this call, but I'm just wondering how one makes that choice. How do you decide who to approach when? And I have, I'll jump ahead. I have a particular scenario in mind. So there's a Codex Alimentarius meeting coming up in Brisbane in October. And that's like a really short timeline thing. Anyways, I'm just thinking, you know, you're saying, anyways, I'll stop and let you respond.
Okay, thank you for your question. So just to start off, I think in terms of your specific meeting, what I would recommend is maybe Melissa, myself, and you can get on a call at some point and kind of go into more specifics, because it would really depend on what you're trying to talk about, or maybe, you know, where you're going with it, or like it's so many things to factor into. So I think just having like a separate conversation on that would be really helpful, and something that we do often. So certainly putting myself up there to have a chat with you offline about something that you're working on. But in terms of kind of how we approach people or who we approach, I mean, lots of things come into factors. Again, this knowledge sharing is really important. If we kind of know an MP or a civil servant or whoever it is, someone in the bureaucracy who might be of importance, we generally tend to know that, or know that this is something that of interest that they really want to talk about or have great influence over. With the MPs, it's a little bit more easier, because there's so many ways you can factor into why their interests are, whether it's their background before they were an MP, now that they're an MP, you know, what committees do they sit on, what are they studying, who's actually kind of putting forward some of their studies on
anything?
Yeah.
No. Filled it up. Okay.
Let me actually just try to identify. I'll mute people. Continue, Neha.
Okay, sorry. And just to make sure that, you know, they could be their committees, or who's actually putting forward certain topics in committees. I mean, we can get really specific. And also just like, honestly, again, a lot of it is just mostly also me hearing from friends on Parliament Hill as well, like what they hear, what other groups are hearing. And again, that information sharing is so valuable to what we all do. So I think in terms of strategy, it really depends, again, on the campaign, who it is, what angle we're taking. So, I mean, there's so many varieties of ways we consider it. I get that question a lot, but I know that's not really a clear-cut answer, but really it honestly depends on the circumstances. And like I said, for your specific meeting that you're talking about, certainly happy to have you walk me through what you're kind of have in mind and where we can kind of go with things so that I can make a better informed decision on how to move forward.
Okay, thanks, Neha.
Great, thank you so much. Someone spoke up and I'm not sure if they had a question. So now if you'd like, it's a good time. I think maybe he was just pushing the unmute button by mistake also. I know, Shelley, you say you have a question, but your mic or your audio is not working, so.
Hi, I'm here.
There you are.
The audio.
Great.
I'm wondering Neha, what you think the most challenging thing is being on this side of the MP table. Like what's one of the biggest challenges you think you face now, sort of seeing both sides of it as an advocate when you're trying to turn an MP around one of our issues?
Good question. Thank you for that. I think the biggest challenge, but also asset, I would say, I try not to look at things too negatively, but I think one of the challenges and assets that has been is that exactly that, is that I understand both sides. I understand competing priorities. I know what a regular day is for them. I understand that international development may or may not be the thing that gets them up every morning or what makes them run for office. It may not be. And chances are, generally, it's probably not their main issue. But knowing that and understanding that has become a real asset because, again, like I said, they may not even know, like myself, I wasn't necessarily an international development person, waving the flag, but, I've really found a home here in terms of what we're doing and kind of how we want to see the world turn out in the end for the betterment of all people. I think all people can understand that. So again, it's finding our voice within things that that they already care about. So I think that's really where I find has been a hard challenge. Just because I get why they say sometimes, well, I understand it's important, but, we have NAFTA and we have other people starting political parties and we've got an election and there's so many things. And I totally understand from a staffer and run any campaigns that it's a stressful time at all times, but this is something that I think is a true Canadian value. And I think a lot of MPs can understand and really sympathize with that. So I do think, again, understanding it is difficult, but also understanding has been kind of helpful.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'm just checking the time. I think we have time for one more very quick question and very quick answer. I think Sherry, you're up.
Oh, I just wanted to add to what Neha was saying because when I was speaking to MP Leslie, for example, he's working on the NAFTA file, helping out Christian Freeland. He said basically for the foreseeable future, that was going to take up all his space and energy. So what I said to him was, if I have issues, because his assistant sat in on the meeting with us, she's here, incredibly engaged with him. I said, if I have messages I want to get to you, should I send them to her? Rachel, and then she'll decide how best to get it to you. And he said, that's a great idea. So it's kind of what Neha said earlier, like you can't always develop the direct relationship with them on an ongoing basis, but if you find one of their assistants is there, that would be great. Thank you.
Excellent. That's a great tip. Great. So I think we're hitting the hour. So I want to thank every one of you and thank you especially Neha for walking us through how to engage with our MP. I think it was very valuable. So thank you for that. And thanks to everyone for your questions, for participating. And as I've mentioned, we will follow up. Stay tuned this week with the recording and by email, and we'll send you also a few links notably to the Canadian Aid Budget Toolkit that Neha mentioned, and to also our website with a few more tools and resources. And we look forward to hearing from you on how your engagement with your MP and other MPs go. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.